A journey through the history of the United Kingdom from the Stone Age to a world superpower. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has roots that stretch back to the Old Stone Age. The British Empire was once one of the most powerful empires in human history. Through many ups and downs, the United Kingdom today is still considered a global power. It is a place that preserves many beautiful cultures and massive architectural works. It is also the birthplace of many outstanding individuals. There is a saying that if you do not know anything about the history of the United Kingdom, you cannot understand the history of the medieval world. The oldest historical evidence of human existence in the land of the United Kingdom dates back 500,000 years to the Paleolithic era. Life here depended on primitive tools until around 2,000 years before the Common Era. At that time, groups of people from lands like the Netherlands and northern Germany brought more advanced skills and tools. They were able to create structures that still exist today, such as the stone circles of Avebury and Stonehenge. Around the year 700, before the Common Era Celtic tribes from Central and Western Europe appeared on the British Isles. A group of these migrants settled in what is now England and Wales. Another group also found their way to England to escape the Roman Empire, which was growing stronger on the continent. Of course, the Roman Empire could not ignore the idea of expanding toward the Atlantic Ocean. By the 1st century of the Common Era, the Romans officially captured most of the land that is now England. The Romans built roads and towns and established military outposts. Meanwhile, the British people gradually became familiar with Roman law systems and language. However, this power did not last long as the empire expanded and faced many problems. Not to mention the appearance of Germanic warriors from the north. Roman troops withdrew from the island of Britain in the year 410, and their influence faded incredibly fast. The period from the 5th to 7th centuries is sometimes called the Dark Ages. This is because there are not many historical records, and there were violent attacks from outside and internal disputes among small kingdoms. Germanic people established 7 kingdoms known as East Anglia, Essex, Kent, Sussex, Mercia, Northumbria, and Wessex. They pushed the remaining Celtic and Roman groups to the north and west. In the year 865, a wave of Vikings from Norway and Denmark invaded and settled across Britain except for Wales. The Vikings were defeated by Alfred the Great in the year 886, but they eventually completed their conquest. King Canute the Great of Denmark became the ruler of England in the year 1017. This lasted for a relatively short time. Then, in 1066, after Edward the Confessor died without an heir, a civil war broke out. Finally, Duke William of Normandy from France won. Rebellions broke out after William took the throne, but they all failed. This historical period left many influences as the Norman nobility brought the concept of feudalism to England. Society began to be divided into classes of peasants, knights, nobility, and the king was supreme. The lower classes had to pay taxes or serve the upper classes. England went through a medieval period, lasting from 1066 to 1485. The main issue was a struggle for power between the monarchy and the church, as well as between the monarchy and the nobility. Conflicts between the monarchy and the church were not just about choosing bishops, but also about how church money would be divided. Regarding the second relationship, even though the nobility were theoretically loyal to the court, they had strong castles and their own soldiers. After reforms to the constitution and law by the first Norman kings, royal power was consolidated. However, conflicts with the nobility still existed and grew under succeeding kings. This tension reached its peak during the reign of King John. The nobility won a victory in 1212, and the king signed the Magna Carta. This great charter recognised political rights and personal freedoms, especially for the nobility. It also made it clear that everyone, including the king, must follow the law. Because of the ambition to expand territory, Edward I summoned a council of nobles from across the kingdom to Westminster Palace to raise funds. These meetings were the precursor to the modern parliament of today. Moving into the 14th century, the situation became grim due to a series of wars and the Black Death. The plague killed 45% of the population in just 2 years. Under Edward III, the 100 Years' War from 1337 to 1453 began between England and France. England lost almost all of its territory on French soil. Right after that, the English nobility split into 2 factions, Lancaster and York. They fought each other for the throne in the War of the Roses from 1455 to 1485. Later on, the middle class grew mainly consisting of Protestants. They wanted Parliament to have more power than the throne, especially in matters related to money and royal spending. The monarchy also had disagreements with Parliament over religion, and the problem became more serious. King Charles I firmly believed that God had given him the divine right to lead. Puritans and Scots rebelled, and the country fell into civil war. Finally, in 1649, Charles I was executed. England became a republic for 11 years. Not until 1660, after the death of Oliver Cromwell, did Charles II return to England from the Netherlands to restore the monarchy. England returned to a monarchy, but to ensure rights, the Bill of Rights was passed in 1689 under William III. It ensured that no Catholic could become king, while also limiting royal privileges. Some provisions of this bill were later used in the United States Constitution. In 1701, the Act of Settlement was implemented, stating that only Protestants could succeed to the throne. This law is still in effect today. The colonial era expanded as the United Kingdom grew. In 1607, Virginia became the first official British colony in the Americas. In 1620, Puritans from England settled in Massachusetts. Other settlements were established at the end of the 17th century. By the year 1700, most of these settlements were governed by a royal official and grouped into the Atlantic colonies of the British Empire. The demand for goods drove colonial expansion in the 17th and 18th centuries. They competed with France and the Netherlands. Besides these 2 rivals, they also had to compete with Spain. After the War of the Spanish Succession and victory over the French England was officially recognised as a nation with a top-tier military. Meanwhile, at home, the Act of Union was passed by both parliaments in 1707 to ensure loyalty and prevent alliances. This officially created a kingdom called Great Britain, under the rule of one monarchy and one parliament representing both countries. This union was maintained despite Jacobite rebellions. Under the reign of Queen Anne, the United Kingdom entered a phase of rapid development in many areas. The growth of industrial cities like Manchester, Liverpool and Leeds led to big social changes and political demands. Queen Anne had 17 children, but none of them outlived her. According to the law of succession, the throne was given to the descendants of James I, who were then ruling in Hanover, Germany. So in 1714, the 54-year-old Prince of Hanover became George I of England. Although the start was a bit forced, the Hanoverian kings were very interested in ruling. The highlight of the period from the 18th to the early 19th century was glorious victories. The victory in the Colonial War from 1756 to 1763 against the French helped England take all enemy territory in North America. By 1820, the British Empire ruled over 1/4 of the world population. In 1800, with the Act of Union with Ireland, the United Kingdom was officially born. However, this was also the cause of internal conflict. While the North developed in a Protestant and industrial direction, the rest of Ireland remained Catholic farmers. These differences led to disturbances throughout the United Kingdom. In 1922, 26 southern counties withdrew from the United Kingdom and became the Republic of Ireland. The Victorian era was the peak of the United Kingdom. It was named after Queen Victoria, who was born in 1837 and died in 1901. It was the peak of expansion and global dominance. The United Kingdom did not have to fight emerging colonial powers or old ones. Other European countries were ready to buy all the cloth, wool and iron that Britain produced during Victoria's 64-year reign. The empire stretched from Canada to Australia and New Zealand. It went from Singapore and Hong Kong to Nigeria and South Africa, and above all was the Jewel of India. However, overseas trade also led to international complications. In 1839, the United Kingdom started the Opium War with China. In 1854, it was the Crimean War against Russia. England occupied the Suez Canal in Egypt in 1882 to protect the sea route to India. The Boer War was fought in South Africa, while disputes with European powers over African colonies were increasing. After this, war British colonies in Africa also expanded significantly. The Industrial Revolution began in the late 18th century and provided the economic foundation for colonial expansion. However, the growth of the factory system and urbanisation also brought new social problems. The clearing of land in the Scottish Highlands and the industrialisation of southern Wales came with massive population shifts. This led to large waves of migration to the United States, Canada and Australia. At the beginning of the 20th century, King Edward VII no longer had the right to choose ministers or decide policies. The responsibility to lead and run the country was transferred to the Prime Minister. King Edward VII no longer had much real power, but he still had prestige. He and the government provided a happy life for the people. In 1931, the Statute of Westminster brought equality to the self-governing dominions of the United Kingdom. This created the concept of the Commonwealth. 4 years after George V took the throne, Britain entered World War I. Despite winning, England had to pay a price of more than 1 million lives. Material damage also led to serious disorders. Instability in the coal industry led to the general strike of 1926. Workers from all industries were on strike for a whole week. The global economic crisis affected the United Kingdom in the 1930s. Industrial centres in southern Wales and northern England were hit the hardest, facing great losses from World War I. The government of Neville Chamberlain sought ways to avoid war. But after the invasion of Poland, the United Kingdom decided to declare war on Germany on September 3, 1939. Prime Minister Winston Churchill led the United Kingdom throughout World War II. He mobilised the entire population for military service, defence and war production. Once again, despite winning the United Kingdom, suffered many losses. The World Wars had a profound impact, which was promoting the end of the British Empire. India gained independence in 1947. Other colonies gained independence one by one over the next 2 decades. However, things were not entirely gloomy, as Queen Elizabeth II was crowned. Since the 1950s, the unemployment rate decreased, and average living standards increased. Harold Macmillan, the Conservative Prime Minister, declared in a famous speech that the people had never had it so good. Radical economic reform was carried out by the first female Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. The goal was to limit the role of the state so the market economy could develop. Thatcher also successfully led the country in the Falklands War against Argentina in 1982. She developed a long-term symbiotic relationship with American President Ronald Reagan. 18 years of Conservative rule ended in 1997 when Tony Blair and the Labour Party won. Early in the term, the government of Tony Blair made important domestic and foreign decisions, such as returning Hong Kong to China in 1997, starting negotiations to restore peace in Northern Ireland from 1997 to 1998. Constitutional reform gave self-government to Scotland and Wales in 1999. However, the government of Tony Blair also quickly disappointed many people with its economic and political policies, especially the decision to participate in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The consequence was that the prestige of the Labour Party declined seriously. Even worse, the United Kingdom became a target for terrorism. In 2005, England was attacked by bombs at subway stations and buses. This killed 52 people and injured more than 700 others. Today, England is not a large country, but as one historian said, if you do not know anything about British history, you cannot understand the world. Although it is facing some issues with reform under Boris Johnson, it is generally still a world power. It is developed in every aspect from economy to culture and society. Thank you for watching the video on the Famous People channel. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button and watch new videos to support the team.